Good morning, folks. Here we are at the forge again, mainly because I'm not smart enough to take a day off. Oh well. You ever had one of those days when you just didn't feel like rolling out of the bed? That's me today. But there's work to do. Before I get a fire built, I thought I'd follow up on another little request from one of our Facebook friends who asked for a little talk about tools. Now, this particular fellow was concerned about the fact that, a lot of people that are starting out really don't know what they're doing. I sure didn't, not as far as the forging goes. And they struggle to get the right tooling without getting too much tooling or investing a lot of money in things that they really don't need. And then, well, after they spent the money, they find out they really didn't need all those tools to do what they needed to do. So, to do blacksmithing, you need three things. You need a fire, and it has to get hot enough to bring the steel to a heat where it becomes to a plastic state. The second thing you need something to hit the steel on and something to hit the steel with. Now, I'm back in my first video. You saw a copy of my first attempt at forging with just a stump, just a piece of scrap iron nailed to that stump, and, well, whatever hammer I happen to have lying around. I've moved up in the world a little bit since then, but I'm still not a tool nut. So what I'm going to be talking about today is, what do you have to have a fairly decent setup and get some actual work done without struggling too much. And you don't have to invest a ton of money despite what anybody says. You can spend thousands. You can spend tens of thousands. You can spend all the money you want, and it's never going to make you a better smith. What will make you a better smith is practice. Practice, practice, practice. And in order to practice, you have to have something to practice with. And in order to have something to practice with, you have to get started. That seems to be what hangs most people up. Now, when I first started out, I think the first thing I used on my first project was a carpenter's hammer. Don't remember exactly, but it was just whatever I had lying around, and, well, I drove a lot of nails, so probably a carpenter's hammer. These days, you can buy dedicated rounding hammers, smithing hammers. You can buy them anywhere from $60, $70 on up to $200 or more. What I'd recommend, without breaking the bank, is to go down to your local Harbor Freight. Now, there's a lot of people going to start talking trash immediately because I'm talking about Harbor Freight, and they're going to say, well, Harbor Freight tools are trash. Not every Harbor Freight tool is trash. And even if it is, it doesn't matter how much trash it is if it works. Just for example, Harbor Freight drilling hammer, 3 pounds. My son uses this when he helps me at the shop. This is his, just like mine. You really can't see it because of the way the camera is, but one side is ground into a dome for rounding. The other side is ground flat for flattening. So you use the dome side to move steel. When you want to move a lot real fast, you use the smooth side to planish it back out and get rid of your hammer marks. Good little hammer, cheap stuff, Harbor Freight, works fine. But if you're just starting out, you're going to want something a little bit lighter. Again, Harbor Freight works just fine. So, different kinds of hammers. Well, you saw the first one, the drilling hammer. You saw the second one, which is basically, I believe, a machinist's hammer. The ubiquitous ball peen. Most everybody has a ball peen around. They can be bought Harbor Freight too. This is a small one. I use it when I'm making little leaf keychains or whatever. These have a ball on one end, hence the name ball peen. You buy these hammers, they're very useful. The ball is used in smithing to spread material. When you smack steel, it spreads the material away from the ball. It moves it in every direction. Very useful sometimes, or if you're trying to smith a curved surface, you need the ball. Another type of hammer, this is actually the one I used in my first video, and this is the only dedicated smithing hammer I own. This is a straight peen or a cross peen. Straight peen, the peen end is turned this way, parallel with the handle. Cross peen, it's turned perpendicular to the handle. Diagonal peen would be set to a side. The peen is used to move steel in one direction or another. If you smack a piece of steel with this, the steel is naturally going to move away from the peen in a straight line. I use this a lot when I'm stretching things to length, or when I want to widen a blade, I'll use the peen and pull the steel down from the spine to the edge. This is probably the most useful tool in the shop. A peen, a good cross peen hammer will save you a lot of time and a lot of trouble, and they can be had from Harbor Freight too. Final thing about hammers, don't start too heavy. A lot of people think you got to have the biggest hammer you can get and you got to hit it hard, and that's just not so. Get what you can handle. Start out with something 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds, start out light. Until you learn hammer control, start out light. That's the best advice I can give you about hammers. One other thing. If you're just starting, don't hold the hammer like this. Don't hold it like this. You're not driving nails. The hammer should be held more like this in the hand. So the hammer almost floats. You don't need a death grip on a hammer. Let the hammerhead do the work. If you hold that in the death grip like that, the only thing you're going to end up doing is you're going to have your blows all over the place. You're not going to be able to develop good control. You're going to hurt your wrist. You're going to hurt your elbow. You're going to hurt your shoulder. Learn to hold that hammer and let it float. You need to keep a good grip, but you don't have to squeeze it. Second thing, if you've got something to hit steel with, then you need something to hit it on. In other videos, you've seen my old hay budding anvil. It was, of course, bought used because I'm not nearly old enough to have bought an anvil that was built in the early 1900s or late 1800s new. Now, I'm not that old. Gray hair, gray beard, doesn't matter, I'm not that old. It's a good old anvil. That's a wrought anvil with a steel face forge welded on. Great stuff. My old anvil's got a sway back to it. She's got a little sway in her. You can't see it quite with the camera, but right here, over the past century, and so many people smashing this anvil have actually compressed the face. So it's got a little bow, but I'm used to it. It works great. These are great. You don't have to have them. What you need for an anvil is simply mass under the hammer. You need mass under the hammer, weight under the hammer. If I had to recommend an improvised hammerhead or an improvised anvil, it would not be a railroad track. Will they work? Sure. Will they work great? No. The top of the track can be work hardened? Sure. But you lose a lot of energy when you're smashing the top of a railroad rail with the vibration that travels through the web. You really don't have the weight, the mass under the hammer. Best thing, go to Harbor Freight. I know it sounds like I'm making a commercial for Harbor Freight. I'm not, but they're the place that I know that you can get cheap stuff that'll still work for you. Buy a sledgehammer. Buy a sledgehammer. I don't know, 10, 12. If you get a 16-pound sledgehammer, you've got a fairly good sized tool. Take that sledge, take the head off, get a stump. Inset down in the stump so you can set the sledge head down into the stump. This is now your anvil. The face of the hammer will be your anvil. Somebody's going to talk trash. That's not big enough. Sure it is. When you're smithing, when you're smashing hot steel, folks, you're only moving steel in a space as big as your hammerhead. So, unless I have a hammer that's 3.5 inches wide and 12 inches long, I don't need this whole anvil face to make something work. And neither do you. But if you take that hammerhead and you set it like this in a stump, then you have mass under your hammer. You can move that steel on that. As a matter of fact, if we've got any history geeks out there like I am, all those fancy swords and things that were made 1,000 years ago, hey, guess what? They were probably built on stump anvils. Stump anvil. Small face set into a stump. Get it mounted up good and solid. Get it set solid on the ground so it's not rocking and moving around. Mass under the hammer. Hey, go to a yard sale and find you some hammers. Go to a yard sale and find an old sledge. Go to a flea market. You might even have one already in your garage, ready to go. Next thing you need, well, you gotta have somewhere to get it hot, right? Well, I kind of showed you the hole in the ground forge for the first video I made. Now from the hole in the ground forge, I went to a brake rotor forge. Not going to go to all the specifics to explain that, but that thing worked great. I used it for a long time. I made a pile of stuff with it. I made quite a bit of money with it. Basically just a car rotor, a brake rotor off a car. You need to make sure you got about 3 inches depth on it. Plumb an air supply pipe to the bottom. Stick your hairdryer in. Hey, there's a forge. I've got the purpose-built fire pot. Works great. It's got a purpose-built fan. Works great. It was a gift. Otherwise, I'd probably still be using the old rotor. Now, if you've got something to hit it with, something to hit it on, the third thing you'd need, the fourth thing that you would not necessarily need to get started, but would be of great benefit, would be something to hold it with. In that first video, you saw me struggle through using vice grips to hold the hook I was forging. Matter of fact, here they are. They work. Matter of fact, if you use them every day, get used to using them, you can do better than I was that day, because I'm not used to using these for forge tongs anymore. Start out working on small stuff, hooks, things like that. Guess what? Long reach needle nose pliers from, you guessed it, Harbor Freight. Used to have several sets of these. They work for a while, they get boogered up. Well, you toss them. They're cheap, replaceable, easy. You can take these, you can take the tips and forge them into a different shape if you need a different shape to hold something. They're good to start with. What I would recommend then would be, these were tongs that I made. They are ragged, they are ugly, they look like they came out of a junk pile. But guess what? I use these for horseshoes. When I'm doing horseshoe hearts and things like that, I don't have a set of tongs that holds horseshoes better than this. This is the best set of tongs I've ever had for a horseshoe. Holds them great, holds them tight. I can do what I want to with them. And these were made from a piece of 1 inch by 1/4 inch stock that I just roughly forged and threw together. Didn't have a set of tongs when I made these. This was the first set I made. Probably why they look so much like trash, but they still work. I'm not getting rid of them, and I'm not changing them. These are purpose-built tongs. These are 300mm wolf jaw tongs. I bought these instead of making them. I'm not hung up on making tools. If I've got money to buy, I buy. If I have to have it and I don't have money to buy it, I make it. But these wolf jaw tongs are good all around, all-purpose tongs. The 300 millimeter, it's grooved there. That's 5/16 round stock, holds it great. It's not going anywhere. It's also grooved to hold that way. Absolutely great, not going anywhere. And the larger sets of tongs, of course, will hold larger stock. Another thing that people like to start out with is railroad spikes. Everybody wants to forge railroad spikes. The thing about railroad spikes is they're a pain in the butt to hold on to. This is a pair of railroad spike tongs. I bought these as a kit from Ken's Custom Iron. I'm not making a Ken's Custom Iron commercial, but I will put a plug in for them. Buy their quick tongs or rapid tong sets, and they send it to you in a blank. You do a little basic forge work, you got a good usable set of tongs. These have worked great. Made a ton of railroad spike knives, ton of hooks with them, a ton of oyster shuckers, and they still just keep trucking. Every now and then I got to do a little adjustment with the hammer, but they work and they hold. So I can get to work making things for my customers, I'll go ahead and wrap this up. You don't have to throw a ton of money into your hobby. You can start out with just basic nothing and make it pay for itself. Work a little bit along, make a ton of hooks, sell some hooks, buy a pair of tongs, make hooks faster, sell more hooks, buy yourself a better anvil, buy yourself a better forge. Make it pay for itself. And the most important thing is have fun doing it. And I just want to reiterate one more thing before I close. I don't care how much money you put in something. What's going to make you a better smith is not how fancy your tools are. What's going to make you a better smith is that you get out there and swing that hammer. Thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe. If you got any ideas for future videos, just leave us a comment in the comment section. Thank you for your time. Have a great day.